The hidden cruelty behind "you're too sensitive." Think about the last time someone hurt you and then made you feel guilty for being hurt. Not because you screamed, not because you created drama, not because you attacked them, but because you simply reacted. You said their words hurt. You said their joke felt cruel. You said their behavior made you uncomfortable. You said something inside you did not feel safe. And instead of listening, they looked at you and said, "You're too sensitive." That one sentence can destroy your confidence faster than an insult, because suddenly the conversation is no longer about what they did, it is about how deeply you felt it. Suddenly, they're not explaining why they crossed the line, you are explaining why the line mattered. Suddenly, they are not responsible for the wound, you are responsible for bleeding. And that is the hidden cruelty behind "you're too sensitive." It sounds simple, it sounds casual, it sounds like advice, but sometimes it is not advice. Sometimes it is a weapon, a quiet weapon used to make you doubt your own pain, a soft weapon used to turn your emotions into evidence against you, a clever weapon used by people who do not want accountability. Because if they can convince you that you're too sensitive, then they never have to admit they were too cruel. If this is your first time on The Hidden Hurts, subscribe right now and turn on the bell. This channel is about the pain people hide, the patterns people repeat, and the dark truths about human behavior that most people only understand after they've been hurt. Subscribe now, because if you've ever been called sensitive by someone who kept hurting you, this video is going to give words to something you may have carried silently for years. Let's begin with the first truth. Sensitive people are not always weak. Sometimes they are simply aware. They notice tone, they notice distance, they notice changes in energy. They notice when a smile is fake. They notice when a joke has anger inside it. They notice when someone says, "I'm fine," but their behavior becomes cold. They notice the small things other people ignore. And because they notice deeply, they feel deeply. That is not weakness, that is awareness. But to someone who does not want to be seen clearly, your awareness feels like a threat, because you notice what they want to hide. You notice the disrespect inside the joke. You notice the jealousy behind the compliment. You notice the manipulation behind the apology. You notice the punishment inside the silence. You notice the pattern. And when you point it out, they do not want to discuss the pattern, they want to discuss your sensitivity. They say, "You think too much, you take everything personally, you always make things serious, you need to toughen up, you are too emotional." But listen carefully, sometimes "you're too sensitive" really means "I do not want to be responsible for how I treated you." Sometimes it means "I want the freedom to hurt you without consequences." Sometimes it means "I liked you better when you stayed quiet." That's why this sentence hurts so deeply, because it doesn't only dismiss the pain, it attacks the part of you that felt the pain. It makes you question your own heart. It makes you ask, "Am I really too much? Do I overreact? Should I stop feeling this way? Maybe I'm the problem." And once you start believing that, the wrong people gain power, because a person who doubts their own pain is easier to control. Type "I felt that" in the comments if someone ever made you feel guilty for being hurt, because many people watching this know exactly what that feels like. They know what it feels like to hold back tears because they don't want to be called dramatic. They know what it feels like to stay quiet because speaking up always becomes another argument. They know what it feels like to apologize after being the one who was hurt. And that's the second truth. "You're too sensitive" is often used to avoid accountability. Imagine someone steps on your foot. You say, "That hurt." And instead of moving their foot, they say, "Why are your feet so sensitive?" That sounds ridiculous, but emotionally, this happens all the time. Someone disrespects you, you say it hurt, and instead of correcting their behavior, they question your reaction. They say your feelings are too big. They say your standards are too high. They say your memory is too sharp. They say your expectations are unrealistic. But what they're really doing is moving attention away from their action. They're turning the spotlight toward your emotions so their behavior can disappear into the dark. That's the trick. They hurt you quietly, you react honestly, then they judge the reaction instead of facing the behavior. And if you're not careful, you'll spend the whole conversation defending your right to feel pain. You'll explain your tone, you'll explain why it hurt, you'll explain why you're not trying to attack them, you'll explain why you're not being dramatic. And while you're explaining, the original issue disappears. Now the problem is not what they did, the problem is how you felt about it. That's how emotional manipulation works. It takes the wound they created and makes you responsible for it. A mature person responds differently. A mature person may not fully understand your feelings at first, but they respect that your feelings exist. They say, "I didn't realize it hurt you. Help me understand. I'll be more careful. I don't want to make you feel that way." That's maturity. But an immature or manipulative person says, "Here we go again. You always do this. You are too sensitive. Nothing can be said around you." That response tells you something. They're not trying to understand, they're trying to silence. Because if they can make you ashamed of your sensitivity, they can train you to stop speaking. And once you stop speaking, they get peace. Not real peace, the kind of peace where you suffer quietly and they stay comfortable. Like this video right now if you've ever stayed silent just to avoid being called sensitive again. And share this video with someone who keeps questioning their own feelings because the wrong person taught them their pain was too much. Sometimes one clear message can help someone trust themselves again. Now let's go deeper. Some people call you sensitive because your emotions expose their lack of empathy. Your pain makes them uncomfortable, not because they care, but because your pain is evidence. It proves something happened. It proves their words had impact. It proves their behavior was not harmless. And if they're not ready to face that, they'll try to minimize you. They'll say, "It wasn't that serious. You're making a big deal out of nothing. You need to learn how to take things." But ask yourself this, if it was nothing, why are you still thinking about it? If it was harmless, why did your body remember it? If it wasn't serious, why did it change how safe you feel around them? Your body is not stupid. Your emotions are not random. Sometimes your nervous system understands disrespect before your mind can explain it. That heavy feeling in your chest, that sudden quietness after they speak, that shame you feel after telling them something hurt, that fear of bringing up the same topic again. That is not always overthinking. Sometimes that's your inner self warning you, this person is not safe with your emotions. And the painful part is, sensitive people often try to become less sensitive instead of becoming more selective. They try to feel less. They try to care less. They try to stop reacting. They try to become cold. But maybe the problem was never that you felt too much. Maybe the problem was that you were giving access to people who cared too little. Read that again. Maybe the problem was not your depth. Maybe the problem was their shallowness. Maybe you weren't asking for too much. Maybe you were asking the wrong person. This is where everything changes, because the goal is not to kill your sensitivity. The goal is to protect it. Your sensitivity is the part of you that notices beauty. It's the part of you that feels music deeply. It's the part of you that knows when someone is silently suffering. It's the part of you that loves with detail. It's the part of you that remembers small things. It's the part of you that can feel what others miss. That is not a weakness. That is a gift. But a gift placed in careless hands becomes pain. That's why you need boundaries, not to become hard, but to protect the softest part of you from people who don't know how to hold it. Now here's the third truth. The wrong people benefit when you believe you're too sensitive. Because if you believe your emotions are the problem, you stop holding others accountable. You start editing yourself. You stop saying, "That hurt me." You say, "Maybe I shouldn't mention it." You stop saying, "That was disrespectful." You say, "Maybe I'm overreacting." You stop saying, "I need distance." You say, "Maybe I should be more understanding." And slowly, you become smaller.
You laugh at jokes that hurt you. You accept apologies that change nothing. You explain your boundaries like crimes. You forgive before you're ready. You become afraid of your own emotional truth. That's not healing. That's self-abandonment. You are not becoming mature by ignoring your pain. You are becoming easier to mistreat. There's a difference. Maturity is not pretending everything is okay. Maturity is learning how to speak your truth without losing yourself.
Self-respect is not shouting. Self-respect is saying, I know what I felt. I know what happened. I do not need to convince you that my pain is real. That sentence is powerful because some people will never validate your pain. Not because it is not real, but because validating it would require them to face what they did. And they would rather call you sensitive than call themselves wrong. So stop waiting for the person who hurt you to approve your hurt. They may never do that. They may never say you were right. They may never admit they crossed the line. They may never understand the damage. But your healing cannot depend on their confession. Your clarity cannot depend on their honesty. Your peace cannot depend on their maturity. Sometimes you have to say, I know what I felt, and that is enough information for me. Now, think about the person who came to your mind during this video, the one who always made you feel too emotional, the one who made you afraid to speak, the one who turned every conversation into a trial, the one who made you explain your pain until you became exhausted. Ask yourself honestly, did they ever become more careful after hurting you? Did they respect the things you told them were painful? Did they listen without making you feel guilty? Did they change? Or did they only teach you to stay quieter? That answer matters, because love does not repeatedly shame you for having feelings. Respect does not punish you for communicating pain. Care does not make you feel weak for being affected. The right people may not always understand you immediately, but they will not mock the fact that you feel deeply. They will not use your emotions as evidence that you are broken. They will not turn your vulnerability into a weapon, and they will not call you too sensitive just because they are too careless. Now, here's the dark lesson. Some people do not want you to become less sensitive. They want you to become less aware. They want you to stop noticing the pattern. They want you to stop reacting to disrespect. They want you to stop recognizing when their energy changes. They want you to stop hearing the cruelty hidden inside their words. They want you to stop trusting yourself, because the moment you trust yourself, they lose control. The moment you say, no, that was not okay, the mask starts cracking. The moment you stop apologizing for your feelings, the dynamic changes. The moment you stop explaining and start observing, the truth becomes visible. And that's when they may say, you've changed. But maybe you did not change. Maybe you finally stopped shrinking. Maybe you finally understood that being sensitive does not mean being weak. It means your soul is still awake. Don't let numb people convince you that feeling is a flaw. Don't let cruel people convince you that kindness is stupidity. Don't let emotionally careless people convince you that your pain is drama. And don't let anyone make you ashamed of the very thing that makes you human. You can be sensitive and strong. You can be emotional and wise. You can be soft and still have boundaries. You can feel deeply and still walk away. In fact, sometimes walking away is the most sensitive thing you can do for yourself, because you finally listened to the pain instead of arguing with it. You finally protected the part of you that kept getting hurt. You finally stopped giving unlimited access to people who called your wounds an overreaction. So, what should you do when someone says you're too sensitive? Don't rush to prove that you're not. Don't build a whole courtroom for your emotions. Don't beg them to understand your heart. Pause. Look at the pattern. Ask yourself, do they say this every time I bring up pain? Do they use this to avoid responsibility? Do I feel safe after speaking to them? Do they care about my feelings or only about defending themselves? Because the answer will tell you everything. If someone calls you sensitive once, maybe they're careless. If someone calls you sensitive every time you're hurt, that's a pattern. And patterns deserve distance. Not always anger, not always revenge. Distance. Less access, less explanation, less emotional exposure, less of your heart in hands that keep dropping it. The final truth is simple. A person who respects you will not need to fully understand your pain to care that it exists. They will not need a perfect explanation before becoming gentle. They will not make you prove that the wound is real. They will not punish you for being affected. They will care because it's you. And if someone only respects your feelings when they agree with them, that's not emotional safety. That's control. So the next time someone tells you you're too sensitive, don't immediately question yourself. Question the pattern. Question their reaction. Question why your emotions are always the problem, but their behavior never is. Because the hidden cruelty behind "you're too sensitive" is this. Some people are not trying to help you become stronger. They're trying to make you easier to hurt. And once you understand that, you stop apologizing for feeling deeply. You stop shrinking your emotions to protect someone else's comfort. You stop calling your awareness a weakness. You start protecting it. Comment, "I felt that," if someone ever made you feel guilty for being hurt. Like this video if it gave you clarity about someone in your life. And subscribe to The Hidden Hurts for more videos about dark psychology, human behavior, self-respect, emotional intelligence, betrayal, hidden motives, and the painful truths people only understand after they finally wake up. Remember this before you go. You are not too sensitive for feeling pain. They may simply be too careless to deserve access to the softest parts of you.